Welcome to episode 13 of Finterpret. We took a break. This is Prasanna Tantri. As you know, I teach finance at ISB. As we discussed last time, we ran our first 10-12 episodes of experimental series. We just wanted to know what you actually, what the audience likes and what you want. And we got tons of feedback. And thanks a lot for each and every one of you who gave feedback. So the gist of the feedback was that, our focus, while people appreciated that we bring in rigorous academic research, the point was that lot of you told us that the whole discussion should not be centered around academic papers. It should we should focus on a real world issue which is going on right now, and we can use academic papers as providing evidence or providing a framework to describe these issues. So we have taken that feedback into account. So what we'll do now from now onwards, each episode will focus on something that is going on that's relevant right now, but we will bring in insights from academic research. When I say insights, it's not just citing a paper. We will go a little bit deeper into the paper. What is the paper saying and how does it talk to that issue? And that is how we are going to proceed for next few episodes, unless you people will come back and tell us otherwise, right? So in the same spirit, so we thought we will start with the discussion on the budget. Right, today, as you know, July 23rd is the union budget. This is a full-fledged budget for the year 24-25. So we thought, why not start do 3-4 episodes on the budget, couple of episodes before and couple after. So today we're going to focus on just explaining what a budget is, what the union budget. When I say explaining, I'm not going to give you definition of budget and all that. I'm not going to bore you with all of that. Just to give you details, what's the size of central Indian government? Where do they get their money from? Where do they spend? What kind of allocations that they do? So I will take last year's budget that was presented as the base and explain you the structure of the budget. That's what we will do today. And hopefully then move on to comparing how different governments, their philosophy, economic philosophy of, we'll compare and contrast economic philosophy of different governments, last 5-6 governments. We have had 3 NDA governments and 2 UPA governments, which is a INDA block right now. So we had 3 of them, 2 of them before and 3 NDA governments. This is the 4th NDA government. So we'll compare and contrast how these different governments have behaved and what has been their, what do they claim and what they've actually done, right? So today in the today's focus is just the structure of the budget, right? So let me just pause and think. When you think about a budget, any budget, why union budget, any budget, what should be the first thing that should come to your mind? The first thing that should come to your mind is what is the overall size of the budget. Now, what do you mean by size of the budget? Budget by definition should balance. When I say size, it can be income or expenditure. You have income and expenditure, and if income is less than expenditure, you have to borrow. So what you receive and what you pay, this total amount of receipts, total amount of spending. So this is the size of the budget. Now, if you see the number for the, there was a budget that was presented last year, and the size of the Indian budget last year, which is 22-23, year 22-23, is 44,96,000 crore. Pause and think about it. 44,96,000 crore. So one thing that you should keep in mind, our GDP last year was around 296 lakh crores. 296 lakh crore. Those of you getting confused, just think about 1 lakh crore, 2 lakh crore. If you just count like this, 296 lakh crore. A lakh crore is a trillion. So that's our GDP. And the central government budget size 22-23 was 44,96,000 crore. Now the interim budget that finance minister presented, if you remember in February, she presented an interim budget for 24-25. That was just a vote on account just for spending for 2 months. That said that this year, which is 24-25, the size of the budget is going to be 47,65,000 crore. Now she is likely to revise it. This budget, by the way, you should know, this budget is going to be a revision of that interim budget which was presented on February 1st, 2024. This is going to be a revision of that. This is because there was an election and the new government has come in. They are going to revise the interim budget. So as per the interim budget, the size is 47,65,000. We will see what the finance minister will say on July 23rd. Now, why is this size important? A lot of people think that this is the resource that central government has, or this is the income of central government. That is not true. This size is after the government borrows. what government earns is much less than what they spend. So it is, so I see a lot of casual comments making government has 45 lakh crore, so this is such a small expenditure, 2 lakh crore is not a big deal, and so on and so forth. Remember, 45 lakh or 44 lakh 96,000 crore is what the government spent last year. It is not something what they earned last year. Receipts consist of earning as well as borrowing. There are both of those. This is the first thing that we should know. So the point number one, anybody who is entering into budget on July 23rd should know should have a sense of size of our budget. So the size of our budget last year was around 45 lakh crore. This year interim budget said 47.5 lakh crore. Let's see what the budget this year actually says. If you can see the sheet that is being shown behind me on the screen, that any budget statement, on 23rd of July, after the finance minister's speech is over, one best way to understand the budget before you go into details, most of the time we spend almost all the time on some small issue of taxes, some allocation here and there. People don't get the big picture. We should start with the big picture. What is this budget doing at a macro level? So my request is, if you can go to this India budget website and click on this budget at a glance, so you will get this sheet, this sheet with 4 columns. So don't get confused with these 4 columns. So the first column, the leftmost column that you will see something known as actuals there, and the year is 22-23. Remember, this is being presented. So this budget was, by the way, this sheet was presented on February 1, 2024, which was the interim budget. So when the finance minister presented the interim budget, the year 22-23 was not yet over. Remember, 22-23 was, 23-24 was still going on. I am sorry, 22-23 was over, 23-24 was still going on. So the actual numbers, audited numbers, the latest year for which she has audited numbers is 22-23. So you will have actual, the first column that you will have is the actuals, audited numbers for year 2 years before the year for which the budget is getting presented. Remember, on February 1st, the budget was getting presented for 24-25. The actuals are for 22-23. If you're getting confused, just pause and ask yourself, why not actuals for 23-24? Ask yourself, why? Because the budget was getting presented on February 1, 2023. So 23-24 was not yet over. So year itself was not over. So how do you get actuals? How do you get audited? So the actuals you have is for 22-23. Now this year is going to be very different because you have a budget in July also. This is not going to happen every year. This is only in an election, in a post-election year, you will have 2 budgets in a year. But usually this is what it is. The next year, for instance, the budget will be for 25-26 and your actuals will be for 23-24. Because by that time, 25-26 budget will be presented on February 1st, 2025. So you will have actuals for 23-24. Just pause and think. So the first column is for 2 years before the year for which the budget is getting presented. So these are actual numbers. These are not estimates. These are audited numbers. Column 2 and column 3 are interesting. Column 2 and column 3 are previous year's budget. So when was this getting presented? Again, ask yourself. This was getting presented on February 1st, 2024. This was the interim budget. So when interim budget, the year before that, year that was going on was 23-24 that year. The budget is for 24-25. So 23-24, the column 2, the column 2 there, what you see, second column, is the budget for 23-24, which was presented on February 1st, 2023. And column 3 that you see is a revision of that, which means now that 1 year has passed from the last year's budget, the FM has better information. Although the audits are not over, by the time February has come, 10 months of year 23-24 were almost over, and the FM had better information about various heads of income and expenditure, and therefore revised numbers are presented. So the column 3, if you keep hearing this term RE and B, RE refers to revision of previous year budget. Now once again I repeat, column 1 is the actual for 2 years before the year for which budget is presented. Column 2 and column 3 are original budget and revision of the original budget for the previous year, just year the previous year of the year for which budget is getting presented, or the ongoing year. Usually budget is presented 2 months before the beginning of the year, which is in February. So 23-24 was the ongoing year on 1st February 2024. So in short, Column 2 was the budget that was presented on February 1st, 2023, and column 3 is the revision of those numbers based on information available as on February 1st, 2024. Now, the last column is the most important one, which is the actual budget, and also called BE. This is the budget for the year 24-25. This was the interim budget that was presented for the year 24-25 on February 1st, 2024. Now, this is going to be revised again. This is, again, you should remember, this will not happen all the year. This would have been, if there was no election this year, if it was a normal year, every 4 out of 5 years, this is it. This would have been the budget for 24-25. This year, because this was done in May and everybody knew there was an election coming up, this was done in February, and because election was coming up in May, so this is an interim budget. So you will have these last column getting replaced. The budget is going to replace this last column. So this is the structure of the, this is how you read this sheet, and I think anybody who comments on the budget, who wants to understand the budget, should first see this sheet. Now, having seen the structure, now let's try to understand these numbers. So the most important number that you have to see there, if you can read row 8 and row 9 there. Row 8 and row 9 are total receipts and total expenditure. Like any other accounting numbers, they have to mechanically match. If you have to have enough receipts to pay. Remember, receipts does not mean income. It is what the government gets, and expenditure is their spending, right? 47 lakh 65. This is the projected number in the interim budget. So let's focus on 22-23 though, because it's an interim budget. Column 4 is going to change. So we are going to, let's see column 3. Column 3 is revised numbers for the year that just got over. So we will benchmark everything with that. When the new budget comes, we are going to benchmark everything with the revised numbers for 23-24, because this interim budget numbers are going to go away, right? So let's focus on column 3. What is the total receipts of the government? Where do you get it? Row 8. What's the total spending of the government? Where do you get it? Row 9. And both numbers will mechanically match. It's 44,90,000 crore, 44,90,486. That's what the number is. Now the important question, and think about it, whenever any budget, right, be it family budget or government budget, the question that you should ask is, where is the money coming from and where it is going to get spent? This is a logical, simple question that anybody would ask. So let's see, where is the money coming from? Let's ask that question first, right? And let's see row 1. And row 1, if you see, we are focusing on column 3 as before. This is the revised number. Why revised numbers for 22-23? I'm a professor, so I'll keep asking questions. Revised number for 23-24, because when the budget was presented, final numbers were not available, because this was February 2024, right? By now, I hope this is clear, even if you are confused at the beginning. So 44,90,000 crores. So the government, we claim that they have to spend 44,90,000 crore. Let's ask, where do they get it from? See row 1. If you see row 1, column 3, you will see a number called 26,99,713 crore. 26,99,713. This is row 1. And it is known as revenue receipts. Now, those of you from accounting finance background, you understand what revenue receipt mean. But those of you not from this background, these are like regular recurring kind of incomes. It's not one time. It's not that you sold some property or something. This is something that you earn regularly. Kind of for an individual, it's like your salary, rent, interest, things like this. And for government, think about it. What will be the biggest revenue receipt for government? Taxes. This is the tax, tax income of the government. If you see row 2 and row 3, that revenue receipt is 26,99,000 crore. Now this should tell you that, look, out of the 44,90,000 crore government is going to spend, the regular income they are going to make is roughly 27 lakh crore. The income they earn is 27. They are going to spend 45 lakh. Keep this in mind. So how do they earn? I'll come back to this in some time. How do they earn this? Where do they earn this 27 lakh crore from? And you get a division there. If you see column 2, row 2 and row 3, 23,29,000 is the tax revenue, and 3,75,000 is non-tax revenue. So I'll come back to non-tax revenue in a while. Let's focus on tax revenue, and you may be getting confused now. 23,29,000. GST collection itself is like 2 lakh crore a month, and why is this 23,29,000? So this is where you have to see the wordings carefully. It is net to center, and now the 23,20,000. If you see row 2, it is what the central government earns. Remember, not every rupee that the central government collects is belongs to central government. There is something known as finance commission. around 34% of what central government collects in most of the taxes will have to be shared with states. You know, if you remember the controversy that was happening few months ago, so 34% has to be shared. Not everything, you know, whatever they collect as cess, that they don't share, but whatever they collect as taxes, they share. So 23,29,000 crore is what the central government actually gets to keep. Now let's see how much they collect. To know how much they collect, you have to go back to this website, and there is, you know, they have a sheet on receipts. Now if you go to receipts, you will know what they actually central government collects. Look at this. Do you see this? Again, we'll focus on column 3. Layout is absolutely same. 22-23 is actual, 23-24 was budget estimates, column 3 is revised estimate for year 23-24 which just got over, and 24-25 is the fourth column it was the budget, interim budget, which is now going to get replaced. Let's see the numbers in column 3. So total tax revenue of that central government is going to collect is 34,37,000 crore. So this is one, if there are kids out there writing quizzes and all that, what's the amount of tax that central government collects? That is 34,37,000 crore, right? And what are the sources of this tax? You should have some rough idea of this. Look, around half, more than half of it comes through direct taxes. You know, a lot of people have this thing, you know, I hear this conversation. Only 1% pay tax, 3% pay tax. So let's abolish direct taxes, and you know, that's crazy. You know, 19 lakh crore out of 35 lakh, almost all your, you know, more than close to 60% of tax collection comes from direct taxes. Corporations pay 9,22,000 crore, and individuals, you know, taxes on income 10 lakh crore. So all 19 lakh crore is your income tax. 19.5 lakh crore is your income tax out of 34 lakh crore. Now customs, customs is a tax on import and export, mostly on import duties that are charged, fuel mostly, oil and all of those, that's around 2,18,000 crore. And excise duties, this is also mostly for oil. As you know, excise and customs are submerged into GST for most of the items except some of them. So oil is the one which still remains, 3,03,000 crore. Service tax, these are old, you know, that's almost gone. These are must be some old receipts. And GST, see this GST, the big one is GST, 9,56,000 crore. Here you have to be careful. This is only the central government part. You know, you will see IGST, CGST and GST. Maybe we'll do a separate episode on all of this. But remember, when you pay GST, you pay state government's part and the central government part. So here they are accounting only the central government part, 9,56,000 crore. So actual collection, so you should not wonder if they are collecting 1.5 lakh crore or 2 lakh crore a month, why is it adding up to only 956? It is only the central government parts, 9,56,000. Rest of the taxes are complete, only GST central government part. And GST compensation, maybe if there is time, we will discuss some other day what does it mean. And there are some minor taxes. So if you add up all of this, you get 34,72,000 crores. So now you must be asking, if they are collecting 34 lakh crore, but why are they showing only 23 lakh crore as income? The answer is in that row where you see that less state share. 10,93,000 crore gets transferred to states. So central government collects 34,72,000 crore and transfers almost 11 lakh crore to state government. In fact, if you see, compared to some of the allegations sometimes appear so not correct, they actually have transferred 70. Do you see row 2? The budget plan was to transfer 10,20,000 crore, but actually they ended up transferring 10,97,000 crore in an election year. You know, they could have easily used this 70,000 crore for some, you know, collected this as tax, cess or something and given away with some kind of a freebie, but they didn't do. They transferred more to state government, you know, 10,96,000. Even the tax collection, something you should notice. The column 2, if you see, row 1, gross tax revenue, the budget was that they will collect 33,60,000 crore. They actually ended up collecting 34, revised was 34,23, but actual, you know, because this was sitting in February, they have collected another 70,000-80,000 crore more than even this, 34,72,000 crore. The actual is close to 35 lakh crore. That's what they have collected because this was an estimate sitting in February. The budget that will be presented will revise these numbers also, and even the transfers to state governments is much higher than 10,97,000. In fact, most of the additional collection has gone to state governments. So this is where money comes from. You know, so what's the story broad? So government collects 34.5 lakh a crore, 34 lakh 37,000 crore. Almost 11 lakh crore they gave it to state governments. This is 22-23, and they are left with 23 lakh, which is in our, now come back to the main budget sheet. So this explains this 23 lakh 29,000 crore. Now what is this non-tax revenue? Again, details are there. I don't want to, if you go to the website, you will get details. But this is mostly dividends by public sector banks, public sector units, not just banks. This is a phenomenal story last few years. Public sector units have seen a major turnaround. They are making huge profits now from losses, and government has a rule that almost their dividend payout ratio should be at least 30%. 1/3 of their profits they have to pay out, and that's why government is earning a lot. So a lot of people focus on disinvestment and this number that will come later. People are missing this big number that is coming year on year. I remember some economists suggesting that these people, if you sell it now, you will earn more because market is up. This is one problem when economists get into predicting markets. We are not good at predicting stock markets. We said 3-4 years ago market is already peaked, so just sell off PSU units as soon as possible. But if now, fortunately government did not sell off. And there is other argument, the argument, I totally get the argument about efficiency argument. If you tell me that you privatized Maruti and it led to more employment, more efficiency, that's a different argument. But saying that market is already peaked, and sell off now, nobody knows what the peak is. We know only after the fact. And the government, government officials who did not take that advice now must be actually, they are laughing all the way to the bank, because they are making more in dividends than what we would have received by selling these stocks at those prices, because those stocks are now 3 to 4 times higher than where it was 3-4 years ago. Right? So we have to be, economists also have to be careful while predicting stock markets. My request to some of our economist friends is not to try predicting stock markets, because that's so real. There is no escape, number will show up. Anyway, so 3,75,000 crore is the non-tax revenue. So totally government is going to make 27 lakh crore. Now this is 27 lakh crore of regular income. Remember, they have to spend 45 lakh crore. Where is the remaining 17 lakh 90,000 crore coming from? Right? You see this row 5 and row 6, recovery of loans. Government has lent somewhere and they're going to get 26,000 crore, a very small amount. Row 6 is other receipts. This used to be a big deal once upon a time. This is your disinvestment, selling of, even this government promised they're going to privatize. Now it seems like it's almost stalled, right? So this year budget itself is 30,000 crore. This will be some share selling of, there's something called SUTI, they keep selling, they coming out with ETF, exchange traded funds of some of the stock holding. I don't think there is any serious privatization being thought through in this. This number should tell you. But it has not led to lower revenue though. As I said, dividends are making up for it. This whether or not you should privatize is a separate discussion. Discussion should, this saying that you will make money and budget deficit goes down is a bad argument for privatization. Privatization should be discussed on its own merits or demerits. We will discuss some other day if it makes sense or not. But this is so this 30,000 crore is also disinvestment. So now think about it. So 27 lakh crore you collected through revenue income, and around 56-60,000 crore you got through this capital income. So basically you're left with, you have only around 27.5 lakh crore and you have to spend close to 45 lakh crore. What do you do now? Think about it. What will you do if you have to spend 45 rupees and you only have 27 rupees? What's the option you have? Borrow. That's it. And that's what your fiscal deficit is. 17 lakh 34,000 crore is what the government has to borrow. And that is your fiscal deficit. This is the deficit. As I told you, the GDP or GDP is 296 lakh crore. If you make it as a percentage of GDP, that will give you fiscal deficit, which will come down later. So that's the fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit in simple language is excess of spending over receipts. That's all. You have to spend 45 lakh crore. You have 27 lakh crore, 27.5 lakh crore. You have to borrow. You see that 17 lakh 90,000 crore. So government had, this is what government thought, but actual numbers will be I think slightly lower, because they ended up collecting more taxes than this, 17 lakh 90,000 crore. So this is on the receipt side. So I hope the receipt side is clear. So government is going to spend 45 lakh crore. They are going to have receipts of 44 lakh 90,000 crore. 27 lakh crore will come through regular income. Out of that, 23 is taxes, and 3 lakh 75 is PSU dividend from RBI, and so on and so forth. And then they have regular non-regular income, which are known as capital receipts, which is recovery of loans, disinvestment and so on. That's around 56,000 crore. This leaves with a huge gap of 17,34,000 crore. Where is this 1734 coming? Row 7. 17,34,000 you see, row 7, 1734, that's the amount the government has to borrow, and they have borrowings and other liabilities. This is what they have to borrow. This is your fiscal deficit. So this is the, whose interest will go from future budgets. Remember, this is not free. Somebody has to pay for it. Government 10-year bond has an interest rate of 7%. So this will increase interest burden by 7% of this amount year on year. 17 lakh crore, if you think about it, 1,70,000 crore, around 1,20,000 to 1,30,000 crore of additional interest we have to keep paying because of this reason. So this is not a free number. A lot of people casually say, deficit can be any number, doesn't matter and so on. This will increase your, I'll show you when we see expenditure, right? So 17,34,000 crore. Now let's turn to expenditure. So let's start from row 8. Again, where are we? We are in column 3, row 8. What's the total expenditure? It has to be same as total receipts, 44,90,000 crore. Now, if you see row 10, that is revenue expenditure. And what is revenue expenditure? Revenue expenditure is like revenue income. These are expenditure, or these are spending on regular day-to-day items. So maintenance, it's like salaries, pension, even in defense, which are regular expenditure of government, whatever is required to keep the government running, they are a part of this. The other big thing is all social welfare expenditure that the government makes. It is various government schemes, be it on health, be it on education, be it on, all of these are considered a revenue expenditure. So this is why I am a bit unwilling to call these as unproductive expenditure. Usually these days people are fixated on this capex versus revenue. People think that this 35-40 is some kind of a waste. It is not waste. It's important. It can lead to much more, we will discuss some, we have already discussed in some of our previous episodes that some of these these are investments. If you remember, we had this Ayushman Bharat discussion where we said that the amount of productivity increase this can make is huge. So I don't want to call this entire 35-40 as unproductive, but let's take it as regular expenditure that you have to make on, and these are not creating any kind of tangible assets. Maybe that's the way to think about it, 35-40. And row 11 and 12 give some breakup of this, two portions of this. This is not presented well, nothing will add up to 35 lakh. I don't know, government should improve the presentation of this. Look, row 10 is the total revenue expenditure. Row 11 and row 12 are only two components of it, not all components of it. So you can't add up these row 11 and row 12 and get to 35-40. There is a part that is missing, which is missing here, right? So way to read about row 11 is one component of revenue expenditure, the biggest component. And I told you what is that? Interest payment, 10,55,427. People make this lazy argument that as long as you make any kind of productive investment, we can sustain. They forget this number. Look, we have only 27 lakh crore of taxes. It's going to take a long time before your so-called productive investment lead to higher taxes. We are already spending 10,55,000. Remember how much we collect in taxes? 27 lakh crore. 40% of what we collect in taxes goes only for interest payment, 10,55,000. More and more you borrow. So this year we are going to, 22-23 we are going to add 17 lakh crore for additional borrowing. That is going to increase interest expenditure by that much. 7%. Just think about 17 lakh crore as 7% of 17 lakh crore is around 1,20,000 crore. So next year, do you see the next year number 11,90,000? Where is it coming from? That 1,20,000 crore, because we are going to increase our borrowing by 17 lakh crore. It clearly matches. You want a back of the envelope calculation? Look at row 4. Row 4 was the budget for next year. Do you see the interest expenditure there? 11,90,000 crore. Why is it higher? Because in 22-23 we plan to borrow 17 lakh whatever 90,000 crore, and we have to pay 7% on that also. So this is going to be we have to be mindful of this. You have to be careful of when you hear this lazy arguments. I'm sorry for using the term, that as long as you make productive investments, there is no problem. As if you make productive investment today, tomorrow tax collection is going to double. That's not going to happen. First of all, that productive investment should lead to productivity. That's good. There are other constraints that may not. But if you are not mindful of this number, this is what killed Sri Lanka. When this number reaches a bigger proportion, I'm not saying right now we are in an alarming situation, not at all. Some state governments are. Some state budget, you will not believe, this interest payment is 40%, 50%, 50% of the entire budget. Now we are talking about 40% of taxes. There are state governments where it's like 53% of the entire budget. So they are already in extreme bad shape. Central finance is okay, but we have to be mindful of this number. So when we say 35 lakh regular expenditure, almost 10.5 lakh is just interest payment. Please, anybody who is learning and watching the budget should be mindful of this number. Now 3,20,000 crore is what the central government gives to state government for capital asset creation. So they are supposed to create assets, roads, and this is a grant given by state to center, which is the reason why it's accounted in revenue expenditure, not although it's for asset creation, is because assets are supposed to be created by state government. They will account it as capital expenditure. To avoid double counting, the central government actually considers as revenue expenditure. So that is a part of, so if you actually think of revenue expenditure of central government, it's not 3540, it is 3240, because 3,20,000 is given to states for creation of assets. But accounting is what accounting is, they go by rules, and that is how they're going, right? And the remaining, so if you take out 10 and 13 lakh crore out of 35 lakh crore, you're left with 22 lakh crore. This is revenue expenditure, which has expenditure on social sector schemes, expenditure on maintenance of the government. So one thing people create a lot of controversy on canteen, whether dosa is subsidized or not, right? So if you take it as a moral question, I respect it totally. Morally, whether you subsidize dosa or not is a different story. But if you think it's a big expenditure, I'm sorry, it's a waste of time, right? We are talking about 45 lakh crore. I know that canteen must be few, I don't know, few lakhs, or even that Central Vista building, for some 1,800 or 2,000 crore is nothing. Again, if you raise it as a moral question, it's a different discussion. But you should not say it's a big expenditure and all of that. It is not. 1,000 crore, 200 crore, 500 crore is very small when you compare to the budget. The interest payment itself, if you have to really worry about something, worry about interest payment. 10,55,000 crore. And next year it's going to be 11,90,000 crore. So that's we have to have a sense of proportion. Again, I'm separating out moral argument. As I told you about privatization, there are reasons for privatization we can discuss separately, but stock market is not a reason, and economist is not someone who knows where the stock market is headed. That's the point that I was trying to make. That's all. I hope I hope it doesn't come across that I'm opposing privatization. I'm not. Finance professor will be the last one to oppose, but the point is not stock market. So then effective. So that's why government has added this row 13 called effective capital expenditure. Because the accounting says grants in aid should be given to states. So 12,71,000 crore is the effective capital expenditure. Although capex, what is capital expenditure? Expenditure made on assets, roads, ports, all kinds of asset creation long term, which the central government makes. Although central government makes 9,50,000, 3,21,000 they give it to states. So 35,90,000 crore revenue, 9,50,000 crore is capex, and within 35,40,000 crore revenue there is a 3 lakh crore capex. That is what you have to understand. And 10 lakh crore out of 35 lakh crore goes only for interest payment. It does not create anything, just goes for interest payment, and the remaining ones are spent on social sector schemes and maintaining of the government. So this is the broad structure of the budget. And now if you come down row 15, that's called revenue deficit. Just take revenue expenditure and revenue income. Very simple. If you go up to row 1, your revenue income is what? 26,99,000, that is row 1. And then come to revenue expenditure, which is 35 lakh in row 10. If you take the difference between the two, expenditure is more than income. That's why it's a deficit, 8,40,000. It is 2.8% of the GDP. So what is our GDP? I told you 296 lakh crore. When the budget was presented, the estimate was that it will be 293 lakh crore if I am not wrong. And now you have to change it. It will be slightly, maybe it will become 2.7 or something. And that row 16 you just ignore, because they are just calling that 3 lakh crore which they are giving it to the states. They are not calling revenue expenditure. When you do that, it comes to 1.8%. The most important number is row 17. This is fiscal deficit. So now you should know. So row 17 should match with what? The difference between total receipts and the borrowing, row 7. Row 7 and row 17 are the same. You can check. This is your fiscal deficit. It's a total borrowing. So if you go down there, So to row 17 lakh 34,000 crore is what the government is going to borrow. It is 5.8% of the GDP of last year. And the target the FM has set for 24-25 in the interim budget, if you see the last column, column 4, it's 5.1%. I think she's going to do better than that, or at least maintain it for sure. We will see on 23rd. But that is the fiscal deficit. And primary deficit is fiscal deficit minus interest expenditure. If you take out, because interest expenditure you can't do anything. If you take out, if you see from 17 lakh 34, if you take out interest expense out, what is the additional deficit we have created this year? See, interest expenditure you can't do anything this year because it's a commitment from the past. Even if you leave out interest expenditure, we have created 6,79,000 crore additional deficit this year because of this year's spending being more than this year's collection. So this is the structure of the budget in a nutshell. My request is, when you see the budget on July 23rd, do this exercise. First ask yourself, what's the total size of the budget? Where is the money coming from? How much the government is going to earn through taxes? Composition of those taxes. What is the non-tax revenue, dividends and all of those? Then the small items of recovery of loans and the disinvestment. That will give you a sense of fiscal deficit, as a percentage of GDP. Then look at where the government, we are not making any, although I passed some side comments on privatization and so on. The purpose of this episode is just information. It is not to make any kind of evaluation here. We will, of course, we will not run away from evaluation. We will do that. But before we evaluate, we should have, because I hear this masala dosa in canteen, why is it subsidized and all that. Those people, they should know these numbers. Those are trivial issues from a total amount point of view. Again, I respect the moral argument. That is why I thought we should have a sense of numbers. So when they spend 35 lakh crore is going to revenue expenditure, out of that 10 lakh crore is interest, and 9.5 lakh crore is capital expenditure, creation of assets, and there is a 3 lakh 20,000 crore which is actually classified as revenue because central government gives it to states. It's actually capital. So effectively 12 lakh 71,000 crore is capital expenditure, right? So given now that we understand this structure, and then our deficits we saw, our revenue, if you go down, we get our revenue deficit, which is 2.8% of GDP. This should ideally be 0. Hopefully we'll go there. And fiscal deficit is 5.8. Revenue deficit is what? Revenue income minus revenue expenditure. Fiscal deficit is 5.8% of the GDP, and primary deficit, which is fiscal deficit minus interest. What's primary deficit? Don't try to remember anything. It is just if you take out interest as expenditure, forget interest expenditure, what's the deficit you are creating this year? Interest is because of legacy issues. So that is 2.3% of the GDP. So this is the structure. Remember this, keep this in mind. When I say remember, I don't expect you to remember the numbers. Remember how to read this when you get this sheet. So before you read any newspaper or a podcast or anything on GDP, on budget, please keep this in mind. This is yours. You should be able to, it should not be that somebody says something and you just take it as it is. You should be able to verify these numbers. Anyone who is interested in the budget should first look at this sheet and before thinking about the budget. So we are going to continue this discussion in a subsequent episode. What we do is we will compare the structure of different governments, as I promised. That's what we want to do next. Next, what was Vajpayee government doing? What did UPA 1 do? What did UPA 2 do? How was NDA 1 and NDA 2, the two Modi governments, and how what is likely to come? I don't know what is likely to come. When it comes, we will discuss. But at least we will see the economic philosophies of different governments. That's what we do before the budget. And then once the budget comes in, we will analyze the budget. We will take 2-3 episodes analyzing the budget. So that's the plan. So stay tuned. Thank you very much.